It's just past 11 p.m. Approximately 100 miles off the coast of San Diego, a US Navy training exercise is taking place. Among the dozens of ships, the Independence-class littoral combat ship, USS Omaha, is scanning the airspace above them, when, completely out of nowhere, the onboard radar picks up several solid mass unidentified flying objects coming from all directions surrounding the ship, closing in at a speed ranging from 30 to 140 knots, and about 3 meters in diameter, heading directly in the direction of the vessel. Investigative filmmaker and ufologist Jeremy Corbell released this footage to the public in 2021. It was taken by a few crew members on board the Omaha inside the Combat Information Center, in which we can see the live footage from an infrared camera on board the ship while this unusual radar encounter was taking place. And it captured this.
Took off. Okay.
Break Omaha, Pickney Kid, Rafael Peralta, pass ability to launch helo ASAP. Whoa, it's getting close. Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind, topside, gust of 40.
Whoa, splashed. Splashed. Mark bearing and range.
Pretty strange, right? Well, today we're going to analyze 3 recently released, highly controversial videos, in the hope of giving light to these undeniably atypical sightings. Okay, so what do we have here? First of all, we can tell that this transmedium object, an object which can transition between flying and submerging, is actually moving, as we can see from the ocean, acting as a reference below. Having stated that, this kind of craft must have a propulsion of some kind, but as we can see from this footage shot with a thermal camera, it does not have any propulsion exhaust, as for example in the case of a fighter jet. No wings are visible, no external surfaces, and as we can tell from the color, the temperature is even in every part of the craft. What about a weather balloon? A weather balloon is carried by the wind. It doesn't just travel at a constant height from the sea to then just hover still and vanish below the surface of the ocean. We can also tell from this video that whatever this is made out of a solid material, and not rubber filled with helium, kinda squishy like a weather balloon. Even a search and rescue helicopter and a submarine were dispatched to the place of contact with the water, and nothing was found. Maybe a flare? A flare, after being launched from a plane or from the ground, goes right back down due to gravity. The amount of time when it actually hovers still is just a fraction of a second. Instead, this object appears to follow a pretty straight path. Could it be a foreign drone? Well, the hypothesis of a foreign drone possibly launched by another country to gather intel about the US Navy isn't this unlikely. What is certainly unlikely is, why would they expose this much? I mean, several ships were scanning the skies during this training mission via radar, so hypothetically sending 14 drones or more around the Omaha, hoping to be undetected, doesn't seem like a great move in my opinion. If a foreign country has the capability of building a drone this small, while sustaining a flight time of hours, opposed to the conventional drones, which would require the dimensions of an actual plane to fly this much, and literally dive underwater, simply vanishing. Well, I guess they wouldn't like to be seen. But this wasn't the only documented sighting during July though. Corbell reported that these unidentifieds were actually overflying 9 warships during this training mission, along with USS Omaha. So, what is the US intelligence saying about this? Well, in their latest report dated June 2021, which covers more than 140 sightings from 2004 to 2021, they basically stated that in the majority of the sightings, they have inconsistent and/or incomplete data to correctly analyze what exactly we're looking at. In 18 of these incidents, these UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena, tend to move in highly unusual manners. And the USS Omaha case that we've just covered, well, I strongly believe is part of this category.
What was splashed? Splashed. Mark bearing and range.
They also included in this report a list of the possible explanations on what those objects could be. Airborne clutter, such as balloons, in which a couple of documented sightings have already been attributed in this category. Natural atmospheric phenomena, such as moisture or thermal fluctuations. Industry developmental programs, in short, classified and unknown programs developed by US entities. Foreign adversary systems, which could be technologies such as drones, developed by China, Russia, or even a non-governmental entity. And the other paragraph, where we have the objects which require us to have additional scientific knowledge to fully comprehend their behaviors. In this category, we also have those images of alleged UFO sightings in which we can literally count the pixels. I mean, not very useful for an investigation, I would say. So in order to have a greater understanding about these unidentified aerial phenomena, we might need to wait a little bit longer when a newer report covering this topic will be released. Even former US President Barack Obama has released a statement about these reoccurring strange sightings during the last 2 decades. What is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there is footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. If you thought that the previous sighting was strange, well, wait to see this one. Let's remain in the USO topic, unidentified submerged objects, just like the one of the previous video. Objects which can both fly and, you guessed it, submerge. Puerto Rico has been known for the numerous UAP sightings from the 1950s to today, and the government has overall been pretty open in distributing videos and letting people know about the reoccurring sightings. The crew of a Beechcraft King Air from the United States Customs and Border Protection, while on a routine patrol mission, noticed something out of the ordinary. A pinkish blob, which appears to be made out of some kind of solid material, sweeping across the sky below them. They decided to give a closer look and turned on their infrared camera, and this is what it captured. A craft similar to the one seen from the USS Omaha, but possibly even smaller, speeding at a pretty low altitude above the airport, then heading to the open sea. What's truly unbelievable is what it does next. This object lowers and lowers until it goes below the surface of the ocean, then re-emerges, seemingly untouched, goes below the surface once again, and splits in two. What? Okay, let's try to analyze this. We can tell that this sweeping object is made out of a solid material once again, and not some kind of weather balloon. And it seems like it's moving at a pretty high speed. Also, during this sighting, the wind was blowing at roughly 25 km per hour from the northeast. And guess what? This object was flying directly against it, which would make the flight of such a small craft extremely difficult. Maybe a drone of some sort? Again, from what we can see from this video, this thing doesn't have any protuberances, such as wings, propellers, or any control surface, indispensable for achieving flight. Also, we're seeing through a thermal camera, so if we want a rough establishment of the temperature of this object, what we can do is simply compare this flying craft with what we have in the background. An example, these animals right here. Now this could be either cows, sheep, or any animal really, and their average body temperature is roughly 37 to 39 degrees Celsius. And if we compare the two colors, we can tell that it's almost the same shade of gray. So, if we take the temperature of the exhaust of a jet engine, or any conventional engine, well, it's not even close. Let's carry on. Alright, it goes underwater and then submerges without even seeing the slightest change in speed. I mean, any object subjected by the known laws of physics would at least decelerate when a mass meets a denser compound than the air, like water. And then it just splits in two. I mean, I genuinely have no idea how an object can just separate in two different parts and continue to travel at the same constant speed. This looks like a thing out of this world. This footage was released by Jeremy Corbell, the same guy who leaked the USS Omaha video, previously analyzed. This clip was recorded on board the USS Russell, participating in the same training exercise as the Omaha, probably through a phone camera or an SLR camera with a night vision monocular strapped on top, and shows initially 3 triangular objects hovering above the vessel. These 2 objects are not very clear and visible, but this one is. Now, from the 1980s there have been dozens of sightings across the world in which triangular objects appear to fly in the sky. Among the most notorious ones we have without a doubt the Phoenix Lights encounter in 1997, in which thousands of people reported to have seen several bright lights in the night sky, which together formed a huge V formation or triangular shape. But here we don't see any of this. This is clearly a solid object, not a bunch of lights in a triangular formation. I mean, there are planes with similar characteristics, the experimental SR-91 Aurora or the existent B-2 bomber. But you know, those planes are delta wings, and not perfectly triangular or pyramid-shaped, like the ones we're looking at. Also, one of them appears to be blinking, opposed to the other ones. This may be a clue that it could actually be a man-made object, like a plane or a drone. If we compare the ratio of the blinking of this object with the ratio of commercial aircraft, for example, which is about 2 blinks every second, one from the beacon lights at the top and bottom of the aircraft, and one by the strobe lights located at the extremities of the wings, we can see that the ratio is pretty similar to the one we're observing. Naturally, the ratio of the blinking of these lights varies from plane to plane, and of course we can't distinguish just by looking at this footage what type of aircraft this is. But once again, no plane or drone is perfectly triangular shaped. I think we may have to find the answer somewhere else. Maybe it's the night vision lens? But how can a lens change the shape of an object? Well, it could actually be a phenomenon called bokeh, which, to keep it simple, is an effect in which the light from a distant object, out of focus, hits the sensor of the camera with the shape of the iris that the light has just passed through. So, as we can clearly tell, this pole being in the foreground is in focus. So a much distant object like a plane or a drone, if the depth of field is not correctly set, will be out of focus, and thus having the shape of the iris. This is a night vision monocular, presumably similar to the one strapped on top of the camera recording this footage, and guess what? The shape of the iris is a triangle, the exact same shape as this object appears as. Okay, so this blinking object could be either a plane or a drone out of focus. But hold on, if we carry on with the video, we can see more objects. What are those then? They don't appear to be moving or blinking at all. They could be simply stars. Overlapping the leaked video with a plain map of the night sky, those other objects perfectly overlap on top. Here we can see the 4 stars of the Sagittae constellation. And at the bottom right we can see Altair and 2 other stars inside the Aquila constellation. Even the US Navy intelligence, with a statement, is convinced that this sighting is nothing more than an artifact of the lens.
That light source resolves itself through the night vision goggles onto the SLR camera as a triangle.
So, can one of the most notable UFO sighting in the last decade be mistaken for an error in properly setting the focus point? Well, yeah, I guess so, even though it shouldn't happen, especially during a US Navy exercise, since the sighting of possible UFOs could be cause of concern. Now, if this camera effect was made on purpose or not, well, we may never know. What we know for sure is that intelligence agencies from all around the globe are trying to come up with possible explanations on what these strange objects could be. Whether they are balloons, top-secret drones, or straight-up aliens, well, from what we've seen today, it's hard to tell.